welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. From the personal logs of Dr. Maya Chun, Radiation Safety Specialist, Horizon Nuclear Research Facility. Log entry: Day 127, 22:43. The first sign of trouble came at exactly 3:17 a.m. I remember checking my watch in that muzzy, half-awake state, the red numbers burning into my retinas as the emergency alert panel beside my bed flashed an urgent crimson. Facility-wide radiation warnings weren't uncommon at Horizon. We were a nuclear research outpost. After all, but middle-of-the-night alerts typically meant equipment failure or calibration errors. This was different. I grabbed my tablet, squinting at the alert details as I pulled on my uniform. Containment Chamber 7, radiation levels exceeding 8,000 rems and climbing. Lethal within minutes, catastrophic to facility integrity if it continued rising. Yet there were no corresponding alerts for containment breach, no evacuation orders, just this isolated radiation spike. The concrete hallways of the facility were eerily vacant as I half-jogged toward the main control room, the overhead lights flickering slightly, another anomaly we'd been experiencing over the past few weeks. The facility sat nestled in the Alaskan wilderness, over 200 miles from the nearest town, built into the side of a mountain with reinforced walls that kept most radio signals and all visitors at bay. The isolation had never bothered me before tonight. Dr. Chun. Major Elias Decker nodded curtly as I entered the control room. His military posture never faltered, even at this hour. As our liaison to the Department of Defense, Decker maintained a professional distance from the research staff, but I'd always sensed he knew more about Horizon's true purpose than the rest of us. Glad you're here. Take a look. The main display showed Chamber 7's diagnostics, and they made no sense. Radiation levels had spiked to nearly 12,000 rems now, yet containment was intact. Automated systems had sealed the chamber, but something was generating radiation beyond what our experiments could produce. "Where's Director Vora?" I asked, sliding into my station. "Called in, but he's quarter-mile deep in his private quarters. 20 minutes out at least," Decker replied, eyes never leaving the screens. "I've authorized emergency protocols. We need to identify the source." I nodded, pulling up the camera feeds from Chamber 7. The interior glowed with an eerie blue luminescence that shouldn't have been there, Cherenkov radiation, but without water or other medium to cause it. As I adjusted the contrast, I froze. Something moved within the chamber. "Major," I whispered, "look at this." In the grainy feed, a vaguely humanoid silhouette passed through the center of the room. Not wearing any protection, not triggering motion sensors, just walking. "That's impossible," Decker muttered, leaning closer. "At these levels, organic matter would disintegrate within seconds. Could it be a camera glitch? Radiation interference?" I suggested, though I didn't believe it myself. "Run diagnostics on all monitoring systems." I complied, fingers flying across my keyboard. The secondary systems confirmed what we saw. Something approximately human-sized was moving through Chamber 7, completely unaffected by radiation levels that would reduce human tissue to cellular soup within moments. The door to the control room slid open as technician Fiona Walsh hurried in, her red hair disheveled from sleep. As our communication specialist, she typically managed external data transmission and our satellite uplinks. "The alert system is going haywire," she reported, taking the station beside mine. "I'm getting phantom emergency broadcasts prepared to transmit to command, but I can't trace their origin point." "Block all outgoing communications," Decker ordered immediately. "Nothing leaves this facility until we understand what we're dealing with." Walsh looked surprised but nodded. "Yes, sir." I turned back to the camera feed. The figure had moved to the far wall of the chamber, where it seemed to be examining the containment vessel housing our experimental isotopes. It moved with deliberate purpose, almost methodical. "I'm going down there," I decided. Decker's hand clamped onto my shoulder. "Absolutely not, Doctor. Those radiation levels are fatal. We have the radiation suits in the adjacent prep room. They're rated for emergency containment procedures. For brief exposure, yes. But this is exactly why I'm here," I interrupted. "I'm the radiation safety specialist. If something's compromising our containment, I need to see it firsthand." Decker's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue further. He knew I was right. I made my way to Preparation Room 6, adjacent to Chamber 7, my mind racing. Our facility studied radiation effects on various materials, worked with experimental isotopes, and developed next-generation containment technologies. But nothing in our research could explain what I'd just seen. As I sealed myself into the bulky radiation suit, running through the safety checks with practiced precision, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were witnessing something unprecedented. The heads-up display inside my helmet showed external radiation readings, and they were still climbing, approaching 15,000 rems now. Through the small observation window to Chamber 7, I could see the blue glow had intensified. The silhouette was still there, but now it seemed less defined, as if diffusing into the radiant air itself. I hesitated at the airlock door. The suit would give me perhaps 3 minutes of protection at these levels before critical exposure. Whatever data I could gather had to be quick. "Chan, are you reading me?" Decker's voice crackled through my helmet comm. "Yes, preparing to enter. We're monitoring your suit telemetry. The moment your exposure hits warning levels, you get out." "That's an order." I acknowledged and triggered the airlock sequence. As the inner door slid open, my dosimeter immediately began climbing despite the suit's protection. The blue light was blinding, forcing my eyes to adjust. The air seemed to waver, not from heat but from something else, as if reality itself was bending within the chamber. And then I saw it clearly. Not human, not even solid. A shape composed of what looked like condensed light, particles swirling in vaguely anthropomorphic formation. It turned toward me, or at least the front of its form oriented in my direction, and I felt a crushing pressure inside my skull. My vision swam. The radiation counter on my HUD spiked impossibly higher. The entity moved closer, its form becoming more coherent with each step, as if it was learning how to exist in our space. I backed away, reaching the airlock door just as my suit's proximity sensors began screaming warnings. The entity stopped, its head tilting as if in curiosity. Then my tablet, secured inside my suit's protected data pouch, vibrated. Somehow it had received a message. Impossible through the facility's security protocols and the radiation interference. One word appeared on the screen: "Coming." I stumbled back through the airlock, the decontamination sequence triggering automatically as I gasped for breath. By the time I returned to the control room, Director Vora had arrived, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled as he hunched over the monitoring stations. "What did you see?" he demanded, not bothering with greetings. I described the entity as precisely as I could. With each detail, Vora's expression grew more troubled. "And it sent you this message?" he clarified, examining my tablet. "Yes, but I don't understand how. Nothing should be able to transmit through." "It's not transmitting through our systems," Vora interrupted, his voice unnaturally calm. "It's already inside them." As if confirming his words, every alert screen in the control room suddenly illuminated with the same message: "Coming." And on the monitor showing Chamber 7, the entity stood directly before the camera, its form now clearly visible, a perfect silhouette of light, with stars visible within its outline like windows into deep space. Log entry: Day 128, 6:15. I haven't slept. None of us have. The entity disappeared from Chamber 7 exactly 3 hours after I encountered it, vanishing between one camera frame and the next. The radiation levels dropped immediately, returning to normal parameters as if nothing had happened. But the evidence remained corrupted data files, the message on my tablet, and most disturbingly, the isotope samples in the chamber had been altered at the molecular level. Director Vora ordered a facility-wide scan and called an emergency meeting at dawn. Now we sit in the conference room, the morning light barely penetrating the reinforced windows that offer our only glimpse of the Alaskan wilderness. The snow-capped mountains outside stand in stark contrast to the clinical white walls surrounding us. The samples have been transformed, Dr. Vora explains, his normally confident voice tinged with uncertainty. He taps his tablet, projecting microscopic images onto the main screen. The atomic structure has been reconfigured in ways that defy our understanding of nuclear physics. Transformed how exactly? Major Decker asks, his military posture rigid even after hours without rest. Vora hesitates. They're exhibiting properties consistent with elements we've theorized might exist in neutron stars, but nothing that should be stable in our environment. Technician Walsh leans forward. And the communications systems? Could this be some form of sophisticated cyber attack? Negative. Vora shakes his head. The intrusion bypassed air-gap systems. There's no technological explanation for how the message propagated across our network. I clear my throat. I've analyzed the radiation signature. It doesn't match anything in our database, but it's not random either. I project my own findings, displaying a mathematical pattern in the radiation fluctuations. There's a sequence here, possibly a form of communication. Decker's expression darkens. You're suggesting this entity was trying to talk to us? I'm suggesting it was doing something deliberate. I clarify. Communication is just one possibility. The meeting continues for another hour. Theories proposed and dismissed. Contingency plans established. Throughout, I noticed Director Vora holding back, his eyes continually drifting to his private tablet. He knows something he isn't sharing. After the meeting disperses, I return to my lab to run additional analyses on the radiation data. The facility seems different somehow, the air heavier, the shadows deeper. Twice I find myself checking over my shoulder, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. My equipment picks up trace radiation anomalies throughout the facility, nothing dangerous, but distinctly similar to what we observed in Chamber 7, like echoes of the entity's presence. I map these readings and a pattern emerges. The anomalies form a path from Chamber 7 toward the facility's central server room. As I compile my findings, my tablet screen flickers momentarily. The document I'm working on glitches, characters rearranging briefly before settling back. Except a new line has appeared in my notes. Learning. I nearly dropped the device. The message remains for 3 seconds before disappearing, leaving no trace in the document history. I run diagnostics, finding nothing unusual except a microsecond power fluctuation that shouldn't have affected a battery-powered device. I should report this immediately. Instead, I hesitate, curiosity overwhelming protocol. What is it learning? How is it communicating? Against better judgment, I type a question into my notes. What are you? Nothing happens. I wait 5 minutes, then dismiss the idea as foolish. Of course it wouldn't. The lights in my lab dim briefly. My tablet screen goes black, then illuminates with a single line, becoming. Before I can react, my lab door slides open. Major Decker stands in the threshold, his expression grim. Dr. Chun, we have a situation. Multiple radiation sensors are activating across the facility. I grab my equipment and follow him to the control room, where Walsh is frantically working at her station. The main display shows a facility schematic with dozens of radiation warnings pulsing across different sectors. It started 10 minutes ago, Walsh explains without looking up. Low-level alerts, but they're increasing in frequency and intensity. Pattern? I ask, studying the display. Yes, actually, they're following network pathways, as if something's traveling through our digital infrastructure, triggering radiation events along the way. Decker turns to me. Like your theory about it learning? I hadn't shared that theory. How did you? Director Vora mentioned your notes suggested cognitive behavior from the entity. Decker's eyes narrow slightly. You should have reported that immediately. I stopped myself, realizing Vora must have accessed my research files without authorization. Where is the director now? Lower level research wing, Walsh answers. He's ordered containment protocols for Sector 14, but won't explain why.
Sector 14.
The classified research area where only Vora and selected military personnel have access. Whatever they're working on down there has the highest security clearance in the facility. Show me the radiation pattern again, I request, studying the schematic more carefully. The anomalies aren't random. They're converging, moving steadily towards Sector 14. It's looking for something, I murmur. What could it possibly want? Walsh asks. The question hangs in the air as the facility alert system suddenly activates. Warning lights bathing the control room in amber. Radiation spike in progress. Multiple locations. The automated system announces. Containment protocols initiated. On the security feeds, we watch as radiation-proof barriers descend throughout the facility, automatically sealing off affected areas. Standard procedure, except something is wrong. The barriers in Sector 14 remain open, while that section's radiation levels climb highest of all. Override the system, Decker commands Walsh. Close those barriers manually. I can't, she responds, fingers flying across her keyboard. Something's blocking the commands. The system keeps rejecting authentication. Decker turns to me. We need to get down there. Now, we take emergency respirators and radiation monitors, moving quickly through increasingly deserted corridors. Most personnel have retreated to designated safe zones. The facility feels abandoned, our footsteps echoing unnaturally as we descend. The radiation readings increase with each level. By the time we reach the checkpoint for Sector 14, our monitors show levels approaching hazardous thresholds, not immediately dangerous, but concerning. The security door to Sector 14 stands partially open, the electronic lock disabled. Beyond, the corridor stretches into darkness, emergency lighting casting bizarre shadows on the walls. My monitor detects a radiation spike ahead, fluctuating in that same pattern I documented earlier. Something's moving down there, I whisper. Decker draws his sidearm. Standard issue for military personnel, useless against radiation or whatever entity we're pursuing. But the gesture seems to steady him. Stay behind me, he orders, activating his helmet light before advancing. The corridor opens into a large laboratory space filled with equipment I've never seen before, or technology that appears more advanced than anything in the upper research levels. In the center stands Director Vora, his back to us, staring at what looks like a containment chamber. Inside the chamber, suspended in a field of blue energy, rotates an object roughly the size of a basketball, a dense, black material that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Director, Decker calls out, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. Vora doesn't turn. You shouldn't be here, he replies, his voice oddly calm. None of us should be here anymore. What is that object? I ask, my radiation monitor now pulsing warning signals as levels continue to rise around us. The beginning, Vora answers cryptically. Or perhaps the end. We found it embedded in meteorite fragments 3 years ago. It's not from our solar system, possibly not even from our galaxy. As if responding to his words, the black object pulses, and the blue field containing it wavers momentarily. My tablet vibrates in my pocket. When I check it, a new message appears. Reconnecting. It's here for that, I realize aloud, watching as tendrils of blue light begin to form in the air around us, coalescing into the humanoid shape I'd seen in Chamber 7. The entity has found what it was searching for. Log entry. Day 128. 1422. The entity hung suspended between us and the black object, its form more defined now. A humanoid silhouette composed of swirling blue particles that resembled stars in motion. Radiation levels climbed steadily around us, our monitors flashing urgent warnings. Step away from the containment field, Director, Major Decker ordered, his weapon still drawn despite its obvious uselessness against the phenomenon before us. Vora remained motionless, transfixed by the interaction unfolding. 3 years studying this artifact, and now we finally get to see what it's for. The black object within the containment field began to rotate faster, its surface rippling like liquid despite appearing solid moments before. Tendrils of energy stretched from the entity toward the field, probing the barrier. "You knew this would happen?" I accused Vora, the realization dawning. "You've been expecting this." "Theorizing," he corrected without turning. "The artifact has been emitting periodic radiation pulses since we recovered it. We believed it was a beacon." "A beacon for what?" Decker demanded. Before Vora could answer, the containment field flickered and the entity surged forward, stretching itself impossibly thin as it penetrated the barrier without disrupting it. The moment it made contact with the black object, a pulse of energy knocked us backward. I slammed against the laboratory wall, my radiation monitor shrieking warnings as the levels spiked beyond its measurement capabilities. Through watering eyes, I watched the entity merge with the object. The blue light and black matter twisted together, creating a swirling vortex that neither absorbed nor emitted light in ways that should be physically possible. Decker grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit. "We need to evacuate. Now, the artifact can't leave containment," Vora shouted over the increasing hum of energy. "The consequences would be catastrophic." Decker hesitated, torn between evacuation protocols and the unknown threat. "What are we dealing with, Director?" "No more secrets." Vora's face was illuminated by the pulsing light from the merger, casting harsh shadows that made him look ancient. "We don't know exactly. The artifact exhibited properties consistent with theoretical exotic matter. The Pentagon believes it might be a technology left by something that isn't from Earth." "And you brought it here," I said incredulously, "without understanding what it could do." "Understanding it is precisely why we're here," Vora snapped. "This facility was built around the artifact. Everything else, the radiation research, the isotope studies, that's all cover." The merged entity artifact suddenly contracted, collapsing into a dense point of light before expanding again in a perfect sphere. The containment field shattered, alarms blaring throughout the facility as emergency systems detected the breach. "Containment failure," the automated system announced, initiating facility-wide lockdown. Heavy blast doors began closing throughout the sector, designed to isolate catastrophic events. We had seconds to decide: stay with the entity or retreat behind the barriers. "We need to restore containment," Vora insisted. "There's a secondary system, a failsafe control panel on the far wall." Decker nodded tersely. "I'll cover evacuation protocols for the upper levels. Chan, stay with Vora and get that thing contained again." He pressed his security keycard into my hand. "This has emergency override clearance. Use it if you need to bypass any locked systems." As Decker disappeared through the closing blast doors, I turned to Vora. "What's the real danger here? What aren't you telling me?" Vora moved quickly to the control panel, his fingers flying across the interface. "The artifact doesn't just emit radiation, it manipulates it at the quantum level. If its influence spreads beyond the facility, it could potentially alter the fundamental properties of matter in its vicinity." I stared at the transformed entity artifact, now a pulsating sphere of blue-black energy hovering where the containment field had been. It wasn't expanding further, but tendrils of light occasionally extended outward before being reabsorbed. "It's stabilizing," I observed, "reaching equilibrium. For now," Vora agreed grimly. "But we don't know its purpose or capabilities." The secondary containment system activated, a series of electromagnetic projectors descending from the ceiling, creating a new barrier around the entity. This one glowed with a subtle purple light, forming a perfect dome. "Quantum isolation field," Vora explained. "Experimental technology based partly on what we learned from the artifact itself. It should hold temporarily." My tablet vibrated again, The message was longer this time. Integration proceeding. Calibration required. Seek additional nodes. It's communicating directly with our systems, I said, showing Vora the message. He paled visibly. Additional nodes. There could be more artifacts. Or it's looking for something else in the facility, I suggested. It navigated specifically to this location, following our network infrastructure. Vora shook his head. Nothing else here would register as a node to this entity. Unless... He trailed off, his expression darkening. Unless what? The Pentagon insisted on certain contingency measures when the facility was designed. There's a secondary research wing, Sector 22. I've never had clearance to access it. The implications chilled me. You're saying this might be part of something bigger. Something even you weren't told about. Compartmentalization, Vora confirmed. Standard procedure for projects of this sensitivity. The facility-wide communication system suddenly activated, Major Decker's voice echoing through the speakers. Attention all personnel. Radiation containment protocols are now in effect. Proceed to your designated safety zones and await further instructions. This is not a drill. I watched as the message on my tablet changed again. Communication primitive. Upgrading interface. The words dissolved, replaced by complex mathematical symbols and diagrams that shifted faster than I could comprehend. The patterns resembled the radiation signatures I'd been analyzing, but infinitely more complex. It's evolving its communication method, I realized. Becoming more sophisticated. We need to isolate all systems, Vora decided. Cut off network connections between sectors. If it's using our digital infrastructure to navigate, we can limit its mobility. I nodded, moving to a nearby terminal to begin the isolation process. As I worked, I noticed the radiation patterns changing again, not just increasing, but organizing into distinct frequencies. Unlike the harmful radiation we typically monitored, these patterns seemed purposeful, almost like, "It's scanning," I whispered, the realization dawning. Using radiation pulses like sonar, mapping the facility. Vora looked up sharply. Can you block it? Theoretically, lead shielding would disrupt the pulses, but we'd need to reconfigure the facility's existing radiation barriers. Do it, Vora ordered. I'll maintain the quantum isolation field. As I worked on reprogramming the radiation shields, the entity artifact pulsed more intensely, pressing against its new containment. The purple barrier rippled but held. My radiation monitor began detecting new anomalies, the same pattern as before, but now emanating from multiple locations throughout the facility. The entity wasn't contained after all. Its influence was spreading despite our barriers. Director, I called out urgently. We have radiation signatures matching the entity appearing in multiple sectors. Before Vora could respond, the quantum isolation field fluctuated violently. The entity artifact contracted again, then divided, one portion remaining trapped in the field while another, smaller components slipped through the barrier like light passing through a prism. The escaped fragment darted across the room, a miniature version of the original entity, heading directly toward me. I stumbled backward, but it moved too quickly. It passed through my chest, a sensation like ice water flooding my veins followed by intense heat. I gasped, collapsing to my knees as my vision blurred. Through the haze, I saw my tablet screen glowing brightly. New text appeared, proxy established. The world tilted sideways as I fell, Vora's panicked shouts fading into background noise. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was my own hand, veins glowing with traces of blue light from within. Log entry. Day 129, 3:46. I awoke in the medical bay, the sterile white ceiling swimming into focus above me. A steady beeping from nearby equipment tracked my vital signs. For a moment, I thought perhaps everything had been a dream, the entity, the artifact, the impossible radiation. Then I noticed the restraints around my wrists and ankles. She's awake, a voice said. Technician Walsh appeared in my field of vision, her face drawn with exhaustion and concern. Dr. Chun, can you hear me? Yes, I managed, my throat dry. What happened? Why am I restrained? Major Decker moved into view next, his expression unreadable. Security precaution. You've been changed. The memory rushed back. The fragment of the entity passing through me, the cold sensation, the message on my tablet. I tried to sit up against the restraints. The entity, is it contained? Partially, Decker replied. The main mass remains in the quantum isolation field, but we've detected radiation anomalies throughout the facility. And then there's you. Walsh held up a mirror. My reflection appeared normal at first glance, but when I looked closer, I noticed thin blue lines tracing beneath my skin along my veins, faint but unmistakable. My eyes had changed too. Subtle flecks of electric blue now orbited my pupils. Your body is generating low-level radiation, Walsh explained. Nothing dangerous to others, but the pattern matches what we've seen from the entity. I closed my eyes, trying to process this information. Inside my mind, something felt different. A presence, not exactly thoughts but impressions, like shadows moving just beyond my perception. Where's Director Vora? I asked, opening my eyes again. Decker and Walsh exchanged glances. Missing, Decker said finally. After you collapsed, he initiated emergency protocols to transfer the artifact to a more secure containment unit. He never arrived with it. The artifact is missing too? No, Walsh answered. It remains in Sector 14, but the quantum isolation field is deteriorating. We've lost 30% integrity in the last 6 hours. I absorbed this information, the implications mounting. You think Vora sabotaged the containment? We don't know, Decker admitted. But he had access codes and knowledge that no one else possessed. We're operating on the assumption that he's compromised. Like me, I thought but didn't say aloud. Instead, I focused on the strange sensations within me. The blue energy wasn't just in my veins. It had integrated with my nervous system somehow. I could feel it pulsing with my heartbeat, spreading through my body in tiny increments. I need to see the artifact again, I said decisively. Absolutely not, Decker responded. You're potentially contaminated. We don't know what would happen if you came into proximity with the main entity again. That's exactly why I need to go, I insisted. Whatever this is, it's already inside me. I might be the only one who can understand what's happening. Walsh looked uncertain. The radiation levels in Sector 14 have increased exponentially. Even with protection, extended exposure would be fatal. Not for me, I replied with strange certainty. The radiation won't harm me anymore. I don't know how I knew this, but the knowledge sat in my mind like a fact I'd always known. The entity had altered me at a fundamental level. Radiation that would destroy human tissue now flowed through me harmlessly. Decker studied me intently. And why should we trust anything you say now? For all we know, you're under its influence. Fair point, one I couldn't refute. If that were true, wouldn't I be trying to free the entity rather than understand it? Check my logic, Major. If this presence wanted to harm you, it wouldn't need my help. After a long moment, Decker nodded. Limited access, under guard, with remote monitoring of your vital signs and actions. If anything seems off, we terminate the experiment immediately. Agreed, I said, relieved. And the restraints? Stay on until we reach Sector 14. For hours later, I stood before the containment field again, now wearing a modified radiation suit with monitoring equipment attached to every vital point. The blue-black sphere inside the quantum isolation field had changed. Crystalline structures had begun forming within it, geometric patterns that shifted and reconfigured continuously. The field integrity is down to 58%. Walsh reported through my helmet comm. She and Decker monitored from the adjacent control room, safely behind lead shielding. Whatever you're going to do it quickly. I approached the barrier cautiously. The blue traces under my skin brightened as I drew closer, responding to the entity's presence. The presence in my mind grew stronger too. Still not words, but impressions becoming clearer, like tuning into a distant radio frequency. I'm going to attempt communication, I announced, removing my helmet despite protests in my earpiece. The radiation levels were lethal, but I felt no ill effects. If anything, the energy in the air felt invigorating, familiar. I stood before the quantum barrier and focused on the entity within. "What are you?" I asked aloud. For a moment, nothing happened. Then my tablet activated in my pocket. I removed it, finding new text appearing. "We are collectors, architects, transformers of worlds. What do you want with this facility?" "With Earth, a node in the network, a gateway point. Your world has achieved sufficient radiation manipulation. Qualification parameters met." The implications staggered me. "You're saying our nuclear technology attracted you?" "Signaled readiness. Evolution threshold reached." "Evolution into what?" The entity pulsed, the crystalline structures within it aligning into a pattern that resembled a three-dimensional blueprint. My tablet displayed complex mathematical equations alongside it. "Transcendence architecture. Proxy required." The blue lines beneath my skin brightened further, and suddenly I understood. I was the proxy. The fragment inside me was a bridge between the entity and humanity, a translator and conduit. "Dr. Chun, your radiation signature is changing." Walsh's voice came through my discarded helmet. "It's synchronizing with the entity's frequency." I could feel it happening. The presence in my mind was no longer separate. We were integrating, sharing knowledge. Images flooded my consciousness. Vast fields of stars, structures spanning light years, civilizations that existed as patterns of energy rather than matter. "It's not hostile," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "It's ancient. It travels between worlds, seeking species that reach a certain technological threshold. It's happened countless times before." "Get away from that thing," Decker ordered. "That's not you talking." But it was me, just more than I had been before. The entity wasn't replacing my consciousness. It was expanding it, showing me perspectives beyond human comprehension. My tablet continued displaying messages. "Director Vora seeks control. Danger to process. Located second node." "What second node?" I asked aloud. "Sector 22. Military acquisition. Incompatible design." The facility shuddered suddenly, a deep vibration running through the floor. The emergency alert system activated, warning lights bathing everything in red. "Major," Walsh's panicked voice came over the comm. "Massive radiation spike in Sector 22. It's off the charts. Nothing in our systems can even measure it." Decker's voice cut in. "Chun, get back here now. The whole facility's going into lockdown." The quantum isolation field fluctuated violently as the tremors intensified. The entity within seemed agitated, the crystalline structures breaking apart and reforming rapidly. New text appeared on my tablet. "Interference. Destabilization imminent. Accelerate integration." The entity surged against the containment field, stretching toward me. Instinctively, I reached toward it in return. My fingertips brushed the barrier just as it failed completely. The entity and I connected. The world dissolved into pure information. I saw the facility as patterns of energy, saw the artifact's true nature as a seed for something vaster, saw Vora in Sector 22 activating another device that pulsed with discordant energy, wrong, dangerous, incompatible with the cosmic architecture the entity was trying to create. When reality reassembled around me, I stood in the same spot, but everything had changed. My body glowed with the same blue-black energy as the entity, which now orbited me like a satellite. The monitoring equipment had fried, my tablet fused into something new, a crystalline interface that displayed data in multiple dimensions. Through the observation window, I saw Decker and Walsh staring in horror and wonder. To them, I must have appeared transformed, barely human. But I had never felt more aware, more connected to everything around me. "We need to stop Vora," I said, my voice resonating strangely. "He's activated something in Sector 22, a military weapon designed to harness the artifact's power. If it destabilizes, it won't just destroy the facility. It could tear open a permanent breach between dimensions. As if confirming my words, the facility alert system began broadcasting. Warning: catastrophic containment failure in progress. All personnel evacuate immediately. Facility self-destruct sequence will initiate in 30 minutes. Log entry: Day 129, 9:17. The facility trembled continuously now, structural integrity compromised by whatever Vora had activated in Sector 22. Emergency evacuation protocols had engaged throughout Horizon, directing all personnel to the surface transport bays. For most of them, escape might still be possible. For us, there was no turning back. 29 minutes until self-destruct, the automated system announced with eerie calm. Through my transformed perception, I could see the spreading web of radiation throughout the facility. Beautiful, intricate patterns flowing through walls and floors like luminous rivers. The entity continued orbiting around me, occasionally merging with my form before separating again, our boundaries becoming increasingly indistinct. Decker and Walsh had emerged from the control room, both wearing heavy radiation suits. They kept a cautious distance, weapons drawn but hanging at their sides. Their fear was palpable, but so was their determination. "Can you stop this?" Decker asked, his voice tight. "Can you reverse what's happening?" I shook my head, the motion leaving trails of light in the air. "There's no reversing it, but we might contain it. Vora has activated a military prototype in Sector 22, something designed to weaponize the artifact's properties." "The Pentagon Project," Walsh whispered. "The rumors were true. They recovered a second artifact," I confirmed, knowledge flowing through me from my connection with the entity. "But unlike the first, they attempted to modify it to control its power. The two artifacts are now resonating, creating an instability that's growing exponentially." Decker's posture shifted. "How do you know all this?" I gestured to the entity still orbiting me. "We are sharing information. The artifacts are nodes in a vast network designed to transform compatible worlds through controlled radiation manipulation. But the military modifications have corrupted the process." "Transform how?" Walsh demanded. "Into what?" Images flashed through my mind, worlds where matter and energy existed in harmony, civilizations composed of conscious radiation, evolutionary paths beyond physical form. But there was no time to explain the cosmic vision. "We need to reach Sector 22, I said instead. "Now, the facility is locking down," Decker pointed out. "And that sector requires military clearance even I don't have." I raised my hand, watching blue energy course between my fingers. "I don't think locked doors will be a problem anymore." As if to demonstrate, I approached the sealed blast door. The energy flowing through me reached out, interfacing with the electronic lock. The mechanism didn't just unlock, it dissolved, molecular bonds breaking down as the door simply ceased to exist as a barrier. Walsh gasped while Decker tightened his grip on his weapon. 25 minutes until self-destruct, the system reminded us. We moved through the facility with urgent purpose, descending deeper than I had ever been before. The radiation levels increased dramatically with each level, forcing Walsh and Decker to rely entirely on their suit's protection. For me, the radiation was now like air, essential, nourishing. My transformation continued as we progressed. The blue-black energy had fully integrated with my cellular structure. I could feel my body becoming less solid, more a coherent field of radiation given humanoid form. The boundary between myself and the orbiting entity continued to blur. My crystalline tablet interface displayed new information. Director Vora. Partial integration achieved. Unstable configuration. Containment priority alpha. Vora's been changed too, I translated for the others. But it's incomplete, corrupted by the military prototype. "And what about you?" Decker asked, the question that had surely been burning in his mind. "Are you still Maya Chen?" An impossible question to answer simply. I was still myself, but more. My consciousness expanded beyond human limitations, connected to something ancient and vast. Yet I retained my core identity, my memories, my fundamental concerns. I'm still me, I said finally, but I understand things now that I couldn't before. Walsh studied me through her helmet visor. And after this is over, what happens to you? I had no answer. There was no precedent for what I was becoming. We reached a security checkpoint marking the entrance to Sector 22. Beyond the reinforced doors, intense radiation pulsed in chaotic patterns, nothing like the harmonious flow from the original artifact. This radiation felt wrong, discordant, corrupted, painful to perceive even with my transformed senses. This is it, I said, approaching the massive security door. Unlike the previous barriers, this one resisted my attempt to dissolve it. The military had incorporated shielding specifically designed to block the artifact's energy. Decker stepped forward, removing a security card with the highest level clearance. Let's hope this still works. The door accepted the credentials but opened only partially before the mechanism jammed. The gap was barely wide enough for a person to slip through sideways. Beyond, we could see a massive chamber filled with experimental equipment, all centered around a containment unit similar to the one in Sector 14, but modified with additional military hardware. Inside the unit, a black object identical to the first artifact pulsed with sickly green energy instead of blue. Standing before it was Director Vora, but horrifically transformed. His body had partially merged with the corrupted artifact energy, green-black tendrils extending from his form into the surrounding equipment. Half his face remained human, contorted in pain. The other half had become a shifting mass of crystalline structures and void-like darkness. "You're too late," Vora's voice echoed strangely, as if coming from multiple sources simultaneously. "The integration has begun. The military's modifications work. I can control the power rather than surrender to it." "You've corrupted the process," I countered, stepping through the gap in the door. "The artifacts aren't weapons to be controlled. They're seeds for something greater." Vora's remaining human eye fixed on me, widening at my transformed appearance. "Chen, so you've been taken completely." He gestured at his own grotesque hybrid form. "I maintained my will. I am directing the energy, not surrendering to some alien agenda." 20 minutes until self-destruct, the system announced distantly. The entity orbiting me suddenly surged forward, moving directly toward the corrupted artifact in its containment field. Vora raised a transformed arm, now more weapon than limb, and fired a pulse of green-black energy. The entity dodged, but the blast caught the edge of its form, causing it to destabilize momentarily. I felt the pain as if it were my own, doubling over as Decker and Walsh finally squeezed through the door behind me. "My God," Walsh breathed, taking in the nightmarish scene before us. Decker raised his weapon, though it was clearly useless against what Vora had become. "Director Vora, by the authority of the United States military, I order you to stand down and deactivate that device." Vora laughed, the sound distorting into something mechanical. "The military created this, Major. Your superiors wanted a weapon that could harness cosmic power. They just didn't expect me to claim it first." The corrupted artifact pulsed violently, sending waves of destructive radiation throughout the chamber. Equipment melted, metal flowed like water, and the very air seemed to warp around us. "This facility will be gone in minutes," Vora continued, "but I'll have ascended beyond it. The power will remain with me as I leave this place." I straightened, drawing on my connection with the original entity for strength. "You don't understand what you've done. The artifacts work in harmony to create controlled transformation. By corrupting one, you've created an instability that won't just destroy this facility. It could tear a permanent wound in spacetime." Green-black energy continued pouring from Vora into the surrounding technology. The corrupted artifact rotated faster, its containment field fluctuating wildly. "We need to reconnect the artifacts," I told Decker and Walsh. "It's the only way to stabilize the reaction." 15 minutes until self-destruct, the system reminded us with mechanical indifference. I stepped forward, my body now more energy than matter, preparing to confront what remained of Director Vora and the cosmic catastrophe he had set in motion. Log entry: Day 129, 1403. 15 minutes until self-destruct. The facility's mechanical voice echoed through Sector 22 as I faced what remained of Director Vora. His transformation was grotesque, half human, half something else entirely. The corrupted artifact pulsed behind him, emitting sickly waves of green-black radiation that made even my transformed body recoil. "You can't stop this, Chan," Vora said, his voice fluctuating between human tones and something that sounded like static-filled frequencies. "The integration is nearly complete." I extended my arms, watching as blue energy flowed from my fingertips. The entity that had been orbiting me now merged partially with my form, lending me strength and knowledge. Through our connection, I understood the true purpose of the artifacts, not weapons but tools of transcendence meant to operate in perfect harmony. "Decker," I called over my shoulder, "I need you to get to the communications hub. Override the self-destruct if you can." "Negative," he replied immediately. "I'm not leaving you alone with whatever this is." The corrupted artifact pulsed violently, and Vora matched its rhythm, growing larger with each wave. His body stretched and contorted, no longer even remotely human in shape. "Decker, go," I commanded. "Walsh can stay. We need time." The emergency alert system suddenly blared to life again, but this time it wasn't the calm mechanical voice of the facility. "Emergency broadcast. All personnel evacuate immediately. Unknown radiation signatures detected. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The message looped, growing increasingly distorted with each repetition. Static crept into the transmission, and beneath it all, I could hear something else. A pattern of sounds that matched the pulsing of both artifacts. "They're communicating," I whispered. Walsh moved to my side, her radiation suit already showing signs of deterioration from exposure to the impossible energy levels. "What do you mean communicating?" "The artifacts," I nodded. "Through the emergency alert system. They're using our technology as a conduit." Vora laughed, the sound like grinding metal. "You're delusional, Chen. The artifacts aren't sentient. They're tools I've learned to master." He thrust his transformed arm forward, firing a beam of corrupted energy directly at me. I raised my hands instinctively, and blue energy surged from my palms, meeting his attack midway. The collision sent shock waves through the chamber, cracking the reinforced walls and toppling equipment. 10 minutes until self-destruct. Decker hesitated, then nodded sharply. "I'll try to buy us more time. Walsh, stay with Chin. Your suit sensors might pick up something useful." As he squeezed back through the partially open door, Vora fired another blast, this one missing me but striking the wall near the exit. Metal and concrete liquefied instantly, sealing the gap. "No one leaves," Vora hissed. "No one interferes with my ascension." I could feel the entity's knowledge flowing through me, and with it came understanding. Vora wasn't in control. The corrupted artifact was using him, reshaping him into a conduit for its distorted energy. The military modifications had created something unstable, something that needed to be reharmonized with its counterpart. "Walsh," I said quietly, "I need you to get to that control panel, the one with the blue lights." She glanced at the station I indicated, positioned dangerously close to Vora's transformed body. "What do I do when I get there?" "The override sequence is Delta 97 Echo 3. It will temporarily disable the containment field around the corrupted artifact." "And then what?" I met her eyes through her visor. "Then I try to re-establish connection between the artifacts." The emergency broadcast system crackled again, but this time the message was different. "Emergency alert. Cosmic radiation convergence imminent. Structural reality compromise detected. All personnel seek phase stabilization immediately." Walsh frowned. "That's not a standard alert. That's not even something our system should be able to say." "It's the artifacts," I confirmed. "They're trying to communicate what's happening." Vora seemed to grow agitated at the broadcast, his transformed body pulsing violently. "Shut it down. These are tricks, distractions." He extended multiple appendages now, each firing blasts of energy at different points in the chamber. The speakers, the control panels, the reinforced windows overlooking the experiment. Glass shattered, electronics exploded, and the air grew thick with the scent of ozone and melting metal. "Now, Walsh!" I shouted, lunging toward Vora to distract him. As Walsh made her dash for the control panel, I felt my physical form losing cohesion. The beautiful blue energy of the original artifact flowed through me, around me, replacing solid matter with luminous radiation. I could see spectrums beyond human perception, feel the quantum vibrations of particles around me, and I could sense the wrongness in Vora's transformation, a corruption that needed to be healed. Vora turned just as Walsh reached the panel. "No!" he roared, his voice no longer containing any trace of humanity. I intercepted him, my transformed body passing partially through his corrupted form. The sensation was excruciating, like having my consciousness torn apart and reconstructed in microseconds. But it gave Walsh the moment she needed. "Delta 97 Echo 3, she called out, fingers flying across the keypad. 8 minutes until self-destruct. The containment field around the corrupted artifact flickered and died. Immediately, the artifact's pulsing intensified, green-black energy pouring outward in violent waves. Vora screamed, a sound like tearing metal, as the artifact pulled away from him, severing the tendrils that had connected them. "Walsh, get back!" I shouted, sensing the buildup of unstable energy. She stumbled away from the panel just as it exploded in a shower of sparks. Her radiation suit was visibly degrading now, the material becoming brittle and discolored from exposure. The suit's internal alert system added to the cacophony. "Warning, critical radiation exposure. Suit integrity compromised. Evacuate immediately." The entity that had merged with me surged forward toward the now uncontained corrupted artifact. I could feel its purpose: to reconnect, to reharmonize. But the corruption ran deep, resisting the original pattern. Vora, partially separated from the artifact but still grotesquely transformed, dragged himself across the floor toward me. "What have you done?" he rasped. "The power, it's destabilizing. I can't control it. It was never meant to be controlled," I told him, my voice resonating strangely in the radiation-saturated air. "The artifacts are part of something greater, something beyond weapons or power." The emergency broadcast system emitted a high-pitched tone that made Walsh cover her ears despite her helmet. Then, "Emergency alert. Phase collapse accelerating. Dimensional barrier integrity at 32%. Reconvergence protocol initiated." The blue entity and the corrupted artifact began to orbit each other, their energies clashing violently where they met. The chamber filled with impossible light, casting no shadows but revealing the underlying structure of reality itself. I could see the quantum fabric of space-time stretching, straining under the conflict between harmonious and corrupted cosmic forces. "We need to evacuate," Walsh shouted, retreating toward the sealed door. "The artifacts are going to tear this place apart. 5 minutes until self-destruct." I shook my head, moving closer to the orbiting artifacts. "There's no outrunning this. If they don't reharmonize, the tear in reality will spread beyond the facility." Vora laughed bitterly from where he lay crumpled on the floor. "Then we all die for nothing. The military's modifications. They made sure the artifact couldn't be reprogrammed." Something in his words triggered a realization. The military hadn't just weaponized the artifact, they'd altered its fundamental resonance pattern. That's why the two couldn't reconnect properly. I approached the chaotic dance of energies, feeling my own transformed body responding to their pull. Through my connection to the original entity, I understood what needed to be done. I would have to serve as a bridge, a translator between the original pattern and its corrupted counterpart. "Walsh," I called out, my voice barely audible above the roaring energies. "Tell Decker, Tell him I understood in the end. Chan, wait, she cried, but I was already moving. I stepped directly into the space between the orbiting artifacts, allowing my transformed body to intercept their energies. The pain was indescribable, like being torn apart at the subatomic level and reassembled incorrectly. But through the agony came clarity. The emergency alert system emitted one final message, the voice now sounding eerily like my own. Emergency alert. Harmonic convergence initiated. Resonance pattern reconstructing. Stand by for reality recalibration. 3 minutes until self-destruct. As the artifact's energies coursed through me, I reached out with my mind toward the facility's systems. I could feel Decker working frantically at the communications hub, trying to abort the self-destruct sequence. But it was too late for that. Instead, I redirected my focus, using my newfound connection to alter the nature of the coming explosion. If it couldn't be stopped, perhaps it could be transformed from destruction into creation. The last thing I saw before consciousness expanded beyond human limits was Walsh's horrified face through her cracking visor, and beyond her, the sealed door beginning to glow with blue-green light as reality itself prepared to be rewritten. Log entry. Day 130-017. I exist in fragments now. When I stepped between the artifacts, I expected obliteration. Instead, I experienced division. My consciousness scattered across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. I perceived the physical realm where Horizon Facility once stood, but also dimensions beyond, folded into our reality like pages of a book pressed together. The facility's self-destruct never happened, not in the conventional sense. Rather, the artifacts used that concentrated energy to catalyze something else entirely, a localized reality restructuring. Where Horizon once stood, there is now a perfect hemisphere of altered spacetime, approximately 3 kilometers in diameter. The military calls it the anomaly. I call it the beginning. Major Decker survived. He managed to reach the surface before the recalibration wave engulfed the lower levels. Walsh wasn't so fortunate. Her physical form was caught in the initial harmonic convergence, much like mine, though her transformation followed a different path. I sense her consciousness occasionally, a flicker of familiar pattern in the quantum noise, but she lacks the stability my connection with the original entity provided me. It's been approximately 17 hours since the event. Military containment teams have established a perimeter around the anomaly, but their instruments fail when brought too close. Their radiation sensors either register nothing at all or immediately overload. They've set up mobile command centers just outside the effect radius, bristling with equipment designed to monitor what cannot be understood through conventional physics. I watch them from within and without, my perception shifting between states of matter and energy. They cannot see me most of the time, though occasionally, when I concentrate, I can manifest a semblance of my former self. A luminous approximation of Dr. Maya Chun, composed of radiant blue energy. Emergency alert transcript. Military Channel Alpha, 2:37 a.m., 24 hours after incident. This is Colonel Hargrove. Operation Starfall now in effect. Perimeter established at 3.5 kilometers from Anomaly Center. All personnel maintain distance. Radiation signatures fluctuating beyond measurable parameters. Team Delta reports visual distortions and chronological inconsistencies within 100 meters of boundary. Second phase containment protocols authorized. Repeat. Second phase containment protocols authorized. They're afraid of what they don't understand. They should be. Decker has been trying to explain what happened, what he saw, but I can sense his frustration. The military officers dismiss his accounts of my transformation, of the artifact's true purpose. They classify everything under radiation-induced hallucinations, despite the evident reality of the anomaly before them. I've been trying to communicate, but it's difficult. Physical speech requires a cohesion I struggle to maintain. Instead, I found I can influence electronic systems, particularly the emergency broadcast network that surrounds the perimeter. But my attempts at communication have only heightened their fear. Emergency alert transcript. All channels. 3:42 a.m. 25 hours after incident. T is isdr.maywaceartfanotweaponst.theyareseeds. IAMCHANGING.youyillchangtoo. Their response was immediate and predictable. More equipment, more soldiers, more fear. I can sense Vora's presence within the anomaly as well. Unlike me, he wasn't prepared for the transformation. His consciousness has fractured far more severely, scattered across the altered space like quantum confetti. He's dangerous in this state, unstable, corrupted, still carrying the military's modifications within his pattern. The entity that merged with me continues to guide my transformation, teaching me to navigate this new state of existence. I understand now why it sought me out specifically. Something in my neurological pattern was already aligned with its frequency, a 1 in billions compatibility that allowed for successful integration. But the process remains incomplete. The corrupted artifact still pulses at the center of the anomaly, its energies partially harmonized but still fighting against the original pattern. The reconciliation I attempted created a temporary stability, but entropy is increasing. The cosmic forces at work are growing more chaotic by the hour. I need to find a way to complete the harmonization before the instability reaches critical threshold. According to the knowledge flowing through me from the entity, if that happens, the anomaly won't simply collapse. It will expand explosively, converting matter to energy in an ever-widening sphere that could potentially engulf the entire planet. Emergency alert transcript. Military channel beta. 6:17 a.m. 28 hours after incident. Attention all units. Multiple incursions detected at perimeter stations 7, 12, and 15. Unknown entities emerging from anomaly boundary. All personnel maintain extreme caution. Weapons free but fire only upon confirmed hostile action. Repeat. Weapons free. Engage only upon confirmed hostile action. They're calling them walkers, fragments of distorted reality, taking on vaguely humanoid form, stepping out from the anomaly's edge. I can see them from within and without. They aren't creatures or invaders. They're echoes, quantum reflections of the researchers and staff who were caught in the lower levels during the transformation. Some bear resemblance to people I knew. One looks disturbingly like Walsh, though its form shifts and distorts with each movement. Another carries traces of Vora's pattern, though twisted and incomplete. They walk with purpose but no apparent direction, ignoring the military personnel unless directly engaged. I try to communicate with them to guide them back into the anomaly, but their patterns are too degraded. They exist in a liminal state between realities, neither fully here nor there. When soldiers have fired upon them, the bullets pass through harmlessly, leaving momentary distortions in their luminous forms. Decker has been arguing with Colonel Hargrove, insisting that the military's response is making things worse. I can hear fragments of their heated exchange through the electronic systems I've learned to access. These aren't hostile entities, Colonel. They're what's left of the facility staff. Major Decker, you're still suffering from radiation exposure. Your judgment is compromised. I know what I saw down there. Dr. Chun was trying to fix what your weapons program broke. That's enough, Major. You're confined to medical observation until further notice. I need to reach Decker. He's the only one who might understand, who might help me complete what was started. But my ability to manifest physically remains limited and sporadic. I've been trying to conserve energy, focusing on understanding what I've become rather than fighting against it. The anomaly pulses with increasing intensity. At its center, where the artifacts hover in perfect opposition, reality bends and warps like fabric under tension. The corrupted artifact still struggles against harmonization, its military modifications resisting the original pattern. And somewhere within that chaotic energy core, fragments of Vora's consciousness continue to fight for control. Personal log continuation. Fragmented thought pattern. I'm starting to understand the true purpose of the artifacts. They aren't weapons or tools in any conventional sense. They're catalysts for evolutionary leaps, cosmic keys that unlock new states of being for compatible life forms. The radiation they emit isn't harmful by design. It's transformative, recalibrating biological patterns to resonate with higher dimensions of reality. The military's modifications perverted this purpose, forcing the artifact to weaponize what was meant to elevate. Vora became caught between states, neither fully transformed nor remaining human. His fractured consciousness still believes he can control the power, bend it to human will. He doesn't understand that the point was never control, but surrender to a greater pattern. The walkers are increasing in number. Every hour, more step through the boundary between realities. They're drawn to the military's equipment, particularly their communication systems. It's as if they're trying to broadcast something, to transmit information they can no longer express in human terms. The soldiers are growing more nervous. I can sense their fear, their finger triggers tightening each time a new walker emerges from the shimmering hemisphere of the anomaly. It's only a matter of time before someone makes a catastrophic mistake. I need to complete my transformation. The entity that merged with me has been preparing me for this moment, the final step in becoming a true bridge between realities. Only then can I fully harmonize the artifacts and stabilize the anomaly before the military takes drastic action. Emergency alert transcript. All channels. 10:29 a.m. 32 hours after incident. Attention all personnel. This is Colonel Hargrove. Satellite imagery confirms anomaly expansion at rate of 1.7 meters per hour. Tactical response authorized. Repeat. Tactical response authorized. Operation Starfall entering final phase. All non-essential personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance of 25 kilometers immediately. They're going to try to destroy the anomaly. They've authorized a tactical nuclear strike, believing it will collapse whatever quantum process is sustaining the altered reality. They don't understand that conventional weapons, even nuclear ones, will only feed the transformation, accelerating the very process they fear. I need to reach Decker. I need to make him understand what's happening before it's too late. The military isn't just risking everyone within the expanded perimeter. They're risking the entire planet. With what remains of my human will, I gather the scattered fragments of my consciousness, focusing them into a single coherent pattern. The effort is excruciating, like forcing together magnets of matching polarity. But slowly, painfully, I feel myself coalescing into something that might pass for Dr. Maya Chun. As I solidify, I can sense the anomaly responding to my effort, the boundary between realities thinning where I focus my will. For the first time in many hours, I feel myself standing on solid ground, at the very edge of where normal spacetime meets the transformed hemisphere. Before me stands the military barricade. Beyond that, I can see Decker being escorted to a transport helicopter under armed guard. My time is running out. I step forward, my partially reformed body glowing with blue-black energy, and cross the boundary into what used to be normal reality. Alarms blare immediately as sensors detect my presence. Soldiers turn, weapons raised. I am Dr. Maya Chun, I say, my voice carrying strange harmonics that make the electronic equipment around me crackle with interference. And I need to speak with Major Decker before you condemn this world to cosmic oblivion. Log entry. Day 130, 1542. I remember gunfire. The soldiers reacted as expected when I emerged from the anomaly with fear and violence. Their bullets passed through my semi-corporeal form, creating momentary distortions but no lasting damage. The electronics around me failed spectacularly. Radios screaming with feedback, screens flickering with impossible data, sensors overloading from radiation spikes. Decker saw me from the helicopter pad. I watched recognition dawn on his face, followed by something between awe and horror. He broke away from his guards, sprinting toward me despite the chaos. Colonel Hargrove shouted for him to stop, but Decker ignored the command. Chan, he called out, approaching the perimeter barrier cautiously. Is that really you? My form flickered as I struggled to maintain cohesion. What's left of me? I replied, my voice carrying those strange harmonics that made nearby speakers resonate sympathetically. They're planning to nuke the anomaly. You have to stop them. Hargrove caught up to us, weapon drawn but held at his side. Stand down, Major, he ordered, then turned his attention to me. Whatever you are, you're interfering with a military operation. Return to the anomaly immediately. Colonel, I said, focusing my energy to appear as solid and human as possible. Your tactical response will accelerate the quantum cascade. The artifacts don't respond to conventional force, they transform it. Hargrove's expression hardened. We have the situation under control. Like you controlled the artifacts? I countered. The same military project that created this disaster in the first place, that caught him off guard. His eyes narrowed. How do you know about the project? Because I'm connected to it now, I explained, watching as more soldiers surrounded us, weapons trained on my glowing form. The artifacts were never meant to be weapons. They're transformation engines, evolutionary catalysts. Your modifications corrupted that purpose. Decker stepped between us. Sir, I think we should listen to her. What happened down there wasn't just a radiation leak or containment failure. It was something else entirely. Something we're equipped to handle, Hargrove insisted. I shook my head, the motion leaving trails of blue light in the air. You're not, but I might be. Emergency alert transcript. Regional broadcast, 1607, 38 hours after incident. Attention all citizens within 50-kilometer radius of Calder Mountain Research Complex. This is a mandatory evacuation order. Proceed immediately to designated evacuation centers. This is not a drill. Bring only essential belongings. Transportation will be provided. Follow all military personnel instructions. Repeat. This is a mandatory evacuation order. They've isolated me in what they call a containment chamber, essentially a hastily constructed Faraday cage lined with lead and experimental radiation shielding. It doesn't truly contain me. I could pass through these barriers with minimal effort. But I stay because Decker convinced Hargrove to delay the tactical strike for 6 hours while they hear me out. The military scientists they've brought in are simultaneously fascinated and terrified by my existence. Their instruments can barely process the readings my transformed body emits. They've set up cameras that burn out after capturing only seconds of footage. Audio recordings of my voice contain frequencies that shouldn't be possible. Dr. Amelia Reyes, the lead physicist, has been the most receptive. Unlike the others, she seems more curious than afraid. You're saying these artifacts are extraterrestrial? She asked during our 3rd hour of questioning. Not exactly, I explained, watching the energy patterns flowing through my semi-transparent hands. They exist beyond our conventional understanding of space and time. They weren't built or created in the sense we understand. They've always existed, waiting to be discovered by species reaching a certain threshold of development. Waiting to transform those species, Decker added from where he stood by the door, still acting as my advocate despite the risk to his career. Yes, I confirmed. Into what? I'm not entirely sure yet. The process wasn't meant to be instantaneous. It was designed to be gradual, harmonious. Until we interfered, Reyes concluded. The military modifications created a dissonance between the artifacts. They're fighting each other now, creating the instability that's causing the anomaly to expand. Colonel Hargrove, who had been silently observing, finally spoke up. And the nuclear option? You claim it would make things worse. I nodded. The artifacts transform energy. A nuclear strike would provide an enormous amount of energy to transform. The expansion would accelerate exponentially. Convenient that the thing we're trying to destroy supposedly feeds on the very weapons we'd use against it, Hargrove said skeptically. Test it, I suggested. Drop a small conventional bomb on the perimeter and watch what happens. They did. I felt it. A small artillery shell detonated just at the anomaly's edge. The results were immediately visible even on their instruments. The anomaly pulsed, absorbing the explosive energy, and expanded outward by nearly 10 meters in seconds. Hargrove's face paled. The nuclear option was officially off the table. Emergency alert transcript. Military Channel Delta, 1921, 41 hours after incident. Attention all units. Anomaly expansion rate increased to 4.6 meters per hour following weapons test. Maintain expanded perimeter. All teams prepare for Phase 3 evacuation protocols. Walker sightings increased 300% after detonation. Use extreme caution, for more hours have passed. The walkers are becoming more numerous and more defined. Some now speak not in human language but in patterns of sound that affect electronic equipment nearby. Soldiers report hearing voices in their radios, seeing faces form momentarily in static on their monitors. I can sense Vora's growing influence within the anomaly. His fragmented consciousness is gathering strength, drawing on the energy released by the military's weapons test. He's learned to manipulate the walkers, bending their quantum patterns to his will. They're becoming more directed, more purposeful in their movements. I need to go back in, I told the assembled group of scientists and military personnel. I need to complete what I started, the harmonization of the artifacts. And we're supposed to just trust you? Hargrove demanded. You're running out of options, Colonel. I replied simply. Dr. Reyes leaned forward. What exactly would you do if we let you return? The corrupted artifact is still fighting the original pattern. I need to serve as a bridge between them, a translator of sorts. I've been partially transformed by the original artifact, which gives me a unique connection to both. If I can fully merge with the artifacts at their core, I might be able to stabilize the reaction. Might? Decker questioned. I met his gaze steadily. There are no guarantees, Major, but I know the alternative is catastrophic failure. As if to emphasize my point, the ground trembled beneath us. The monitoring equipment showed another surge in the anomaly's energy output. The expansion rate had increased again. Time is running out, I warned. The decision wasn't unanimous, but necessity overruled caution. They agreed to escort me back to the anomaly's perimeter, though escort hardly seemed the right word for the heavily armed convoy that transported my containment chamber to the edge of the transformed hemisphere. As we approached, I could feel the artifacts calling to me, the pure, harmonious signal of the original entity and the discordant, corrupted pattern of its modified counterpart. Between them, fragments of consciousness swirled in quantum flux, Walsh, Vora, and dozens of others caught in the transformation. When the convoy stopped, I simply dissolved through the containment chamber's walls, reforming outside as a luminous humanoid figure. The soldiers reflexively raised their weapons, but Decker ordered them to stand down. He approached me one last time. Is there any part of you that's still Maya-chan? He asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. I retain her memories, her core values, her fundamental concerns. But I'm something more now, too. Something I don't fully understand yet. And if you succeed in there, what happens to you? I don't know, I admitted. But whatever happens, it will be necessary. He nodded, accepting the uncertainty with military stoicism. Good luck, Doctor. I turned toward the shimmering hemisphere of altered reality. At its boundary, space itself seemed to fold and ripple like liquid glass. Beyond, I could see distorted versions of the landscape, multiple realities layered atop one another like transparent pages. Just before I stepped through, the emergency alert system blared to life across the entire perimeter. Emergency alert. Attention all personnel. Multiple Walker convergence detected at anomaly core. Unknown energy signature building. All monitoring stations report immediately, but the alert wasn't coming from the military command. It was coming from within the anomaly itself, from Vora. I pushed through the boundary, feeling reality shift around me as I re-entered the transformed space. The physical laws here had continued to evolve in my absence. Gravity fluctuated in waves. Light moved at variable speeds, creating cascading rainbows that folded through multiple dimensions. Time itself seemed elastic, moments stretching and compressing unpredictably. At the center of it all, where the research facility once stood, a swirling vortex of energy had formed. Within it, I could see the artifacts, the original blue-black sphere and its corrupted green-black counterpart, orbiting each other in perfect opposition. Between them, something was taking shape, a humanoid figure composed of both energies, growing more defined with each passing moment. Vora had found a way to reconstitute himself at the anomaly's core, and all around him, walkers were converging, drawn by his gravitational pull on their quantum patterns. As I moved toward the center, reality bending around my own transformed body, I realized with horror what he was attempting. Vora wasn't trying to stabilize the artifacts or harmonize their energies. He was trying to force them into a new configuration entirely, with himself as the permanent bridge between them. The knowledge flowing through me from my connection with the original entity made one thing devastatingly clear. If Vora succeeded, the transformation wouldn't be contained to this small corner of Earth. It would spread across the planet, rewriting reality according to his corrupted pattern. I accelerated toward the core, my form shifting from pseudo-solid to pure energy as I abandoned the last vestiges of physical limitation. Ahead of me, Vora's newly constituted form turned, sensing my approach. His face, still recognizable despite its transformation, twisted into a smile that defied human anatomy. "Chan!" His voice resonated through quantum frequencies. "You're just in time to witness the birth of a new reality." Around us, the walkers began to synchronize their movements, forming concentric rings that rotated around the artifacts. I realized with a shock that they weren't independent entities any longer. They were extensions of Vora's will, quantum puppets dancing to his corrupted pattern. "This isn't what the artifacts were meant for, Vora." I projected, my consciousness expanding to encompass the space between us. "You're forcing a pattern that can't sustain itself." "I'm improving upon the original design," he countered, green-black energy coursing through his form. "Why accept transformation on some cosmic entity's terms when we can direct it ourselves?" That's what the military understood. That's what you never grasped. Behind him, the corrupted artifact pulsed violently, sending waves of distortion through the surrounding space. The boundary of the anomaly would be expanding rapidly now, threatening the evacuation efforts beyond. I had minutes, perhaps seconds, to act before Vora's corruption became irreversible. Log entry: Day 130, 2238. Reality shattered around us as Vora and I confronted each other at the anomaly's core. The artifacts spun faster, their orbits decaying as they spiraled closer together with Vora positioned between them. His form had become a grotesque hybrid, part human, part radiation entity, part something else entirely. Tendrils of green-black energy extended from his body, connecting him to the corrupted artifact, while similar tendrils of blue-black linked him to the original. "You still don't understand the potential," Vora said, his voice resonating across multiple frequencies simultaneously. "These artifacts can remake the world, remake humanity itself. No more disease, no more death, no more limitations." "At what cost?" I projected, struggling to maintain my cohesion as the energy patterns around us grew increasingly chaotic. "You're not creating transcendence, Vora. You're creating corruption." The walkers continued their orbital dance around us, their movements becoming increasingly erratic as Vora's control over them strengthened. I recognized fragments of Walsh in one of them, her distinctive energy signature still partially intact despite the transformation. The entity that had merged with me reached out instinctively toward these broken patterns, recognizing them as parts of the whole that should be harmonized, not controlled. "The military tried to weaponize cosmic evolution," Vora countered, spreading his arms as the artifacts drew closer to him. "I'm simply redirecting it toward human ascension. Why should we wait millions of years for what we can have now?" The ground beneath us, what remained of the facility's deepest level, began to disintegrate, matter converting to energy that fed the growing reaction. Above, the hemisphere of the anomaly pulsed violently, expanding outward in waves that I knew were breaching the military's perimeter defenses. Emergency alert transcript. All channels. 2242, 44 hours after incident. Critical alert. Anomaly expansion accelerating. Boundary advancing at 27 meters per minute. All personnel evacuate immediately to minimum safe distance. Repeat. All personnel evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. I could sense the panic outside the anomaly. Soldiers abandoning equipment, vehicles speeding away from the advancing boundary, Hargrove shouting orders as their carefully established perimeter collapsed. Somewhere in that chaos was Decker, likely refusing to retreat despite the danger. With a tremendous effort of will, I pushed closer to the swirling artifacts, my transformed consciousness extending toward them like reaching hands. The original entity that had merged with me responded, lending me strength and knowledge. Through our connection, I began to understand the true purpose of the artifacts more clearly than ever before. They weren't simply tools for transformation. They were nodes in a vast cosmic network, designed to guide compatible species toward a harmonic convergence with the underlying quantum fabric of reality itself. The radiation they emitted was a language of sorts, instructions for reorganizing matter and consciousness into higher dimensional patterns. Vora's corruption, and the military's modifications that enabled it, had twisted this language into something monstrous. "Look around you, Vora," I projected, gesturing to the disintegrating space around us. "This isn't ascension, it's destruction." For just a moment, I saw doubt flicker across his transformed features. The human part of him, the scientist who had once sought knowledge for its own sake, recognized the truth in my words. But the corrupted pattern had taken too strong a hold. The green-black energy surged through him, reinforcing the military's modifications. "It's necessary destruction," he insisted, "breaking down the old to build the new. You've always lacked vision, Chin. Always played it safe, followed the rules, accepted limitations." The artifacts were now mere meters apart, their orbits decaying rapidly as they spiraled inward. Between them, Vora's form expanded, absorbing more of their energy with each rotation. The walkers moved faster, their patterns beginning to blur together into a single swirling mass of quantum potential. I made my decision. There was only one way to stop what was happening, and it would require sacrificing what remained of my individual identity. The entity within me had been preparing me for this moment, the complete surrender of self to become a true conduit for the original pattern. As I began to dissolve the boundaries of my consciousness, allowing the entity to flow through me completely, I felt a familiar presence nearby. Walsh, or what remained of her, had broken free from Vora's control, her walker form approaching me with purpose. Behind her, others followed, their patterns resonating with mine as they rejected Vora's corrupted influence. "No!" Vora shouted, realizing what was happening. He extended his tendrils toward the rebellious walkers, trying to reassert control. "They are mine to direct," but his connection wasn't as deep as mine. The original entity had shared its pattern with me willingly, creating a harmony that Vora's force control couldn't match. One by one, the walkers broke free, forming a new orbit around me instead. Emergency alert transcript. Military channel Echo. 2251, 44 hours after incident. Colonel Hargrove to all units. Anomaly behavior changing. Expansion rate fluctuating. Unknown energy signatures detected at core. Maintain evacuation but hold secondary perimeter at 10 kilometers. Scientific Team Alpha remain for observation. Repeat. Scientific Team Alpha remain for observation. Vora howled with rage, his form growing more monstrous as he drew power directly from the corrupted artifact. The military's modifications had given him access to aspects of the transformation that should have remained beyond his reach. He had become something between human and cosmic force, powerful but fundamentally unstable. "If I can't control them, I'll consume them," he declared, pulling the artifacts closer. The moment they touched his transformed body, reality itself seemed to scream. The sound transcended physical sensation, rippling through quantum fields and folding dimensions. The anomaly's boundary pulsed violently, expanding outward in a sudden burst that I knew would have engulfed the remaining military observers. Inside, at the core, Vora began to change again. The artifacts didn't merge with him as he had planned. They fought against his attempt to force harmonization. The corrupted artifact poured its green-black energy into him without restraint, while the original resisted, creating a catastrophic imbalance. I seized the moment, reaching out with my consciousness fully synchronized with the original entity. The walkers moved with me, our patterns aligned in perfect harmony. Together, we surrounded Vora, forming a living barrier between him and the original artifact. "It's over, Vora," I projected, no longer speaking with a single voice, but with the collective resonance of all who had been transformed. "The pattern can't be forced." "Then I'll tear it apart," he screamed, directing the full power of the corrupted artifact outward. The resulting explosion of energy should have destroyed us all. Instead, something remarkable happened. The walkers and I absorbed the blast, our harmonized patterns distributing the force across multiple quantum dimensions. For a brief, transcendent moment, I experienced existence from perspectives beyond human comprehension, seeing reality as nested frequencies, interacting patterns, dynamic information exchanges. When my awareness returned to the present moment, I found myself floating at the exact center of the anomaly. Vora had been torn apart by his own attack, his consciousness scattered into quantum fragments too small to reconstitute. The corrupted artifact still pulsed with chaotic energy, but its connection to the military's modifications had been severed. The original artifact hovered before me, its blue-black surface rippling like liquid starlight. The entity within me, now barely distinguishable from my own consciousness, recognized what needed to be done. To stabilize the anomaly and prevent catastrophic expansion, the artifacts had to be fully harmonized. Not forced into alignment as Vora had attempted, but gently guided back to their original resonance pattern. I reached out, touching the original artifact with hands that were no longer physical but pure energy shaped by will. Through me, it extended its pattern toward its corrupted counterpart. The green-black surface of the modified artifact resisted at first military algorithms fighting against cosmic intent. But slowly, inevitably, the original pattern began to reassert itself. Around us, the walkers formed a perfect sphere, their energy creating a buffer zone that contained the harmonization process. Walsh's familiar pattern pulsed near me, offering support and stability as the artifacts began to synchronize. Emergency Alert Transcript. Scientific Observation Team. 2307, 45 hours after incident. Dr. Reyes to command. Anomaly stabilizing. Expansion has ceased. Energy readings show decreasing amplitude but increasing frequency. Something is happening at the core. Request permission to deploy remote observation drone. The harmonization accelerated, colors shifting and merging as the corrupted artifact slowly accepted the original pattern. The violent green-black energy softened, blending with blue to create a new hue that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. The military's modifications didn't disappear completely. They were incorporated, transformed, their purpose redirected from weapon to catalyst. As the artifacts neared complete synchronization, I felt my consciousness expanding beyond the bounds of the anomaly. I could sense Decker at the observation post, his familiar mind pattern tense with concern. I could feel Dr. Reyes's scientific curiosity as she monitored readings she couldn't possibly understand. I could even perceive Colonel Hargrove's conflicted emotions, fear warring with duty, awe battling with training. The final moment of harmonization approached. The artifacts were now spinning in perfect unison, their surfaces reflecting each other like quantum mirrors. But something was still missing, a final catalyst to complete the process. With sudden clarity, I understood what was required. To truly stabilize the anomaly, a conscious bridge was needed, a mind that understood both human limitation and cosmic potential. The entity had been preparing me for this role from the beginning, guiding my transformation toward this inevitable conclusion. I turned to the gathered walkers, projecting my understanding to them. Some, like Walsh, responded with acceptance, their patterns resonating with mine. Others hesitated, still clinging to fragments of their former selves. But all recognized the necessity of what was about to happen. With a final surge of will, I positioned myself between the synchronizing artifacts and surrendered completely to the pattern. My consciousness expanded outward in all directions simultaneously as I became the living bridge between cosmic intent and human understanding. Reality fractured one final time, not in destruction, but in rebirth. From the personal logs of Dr. Maya Chun, Radiation Safety Specialist, Horizon Nuclear Research Facility. Log entry. Day 147. Time unknown. I've been trying to record this final entry for 17 days. Each attempt feels both futile and necessary. Futile because language itself has become an imperfect vessel for what I need to express. Necessary because some part of me still clings to human rituals of documentation and closure. The transformation is complete. The anomaly has stabilized into what the military now calls the Horizon Sphere, a perfect hemisphere of iridescent energy extending 3.7 kilometers from what was once the facility's core. They've established a permanent research station at the perimeter, though their instruments can barely penetrate the boundary. Inside, reality operates according to different principles. I exist simultaneously within and beyond the sphere. My consciousness flows through quantum fields that intersect with conventional spacetime without being bound by it. Through effort, I can still manifest a physical form resembling my human self, though it's becoming increasingly difficult to remember why I should. The walkers move freely through the Horizon Sphere, their patterns harmonized with the new reality we've created. Walsh retains more of her humanity than most. Perhaps because she was already attuned to communication frequencies, her mind was more adaptable to the transformation. We speak often, though not in words. Her presence is a comfort as I navigate this strange new existence. Emergency Alert Transcript. Scientific Observation Team. 9:32. 147 days after incident. Automated alert. Radiation signature Delta 7 detected approaching perimeter. Entity manifestation imminent. All personnel maintain minimum safe distance. Recording systems activated. I can sense them watching whenever I approach the boundary. Dozens of scientists, soldiers, and government officials, all desperate to understand what they're witnessing. Decker is often among them. His mind radiates a complex mixture of grief, wonder, and stubborn determination. He still believes he can somehow rescue me, return me to what I was. I wish I could explain that there's nothing to rescue me from. The artifacts have fully merged now, becoming something new, a quantum seed from which this altered pocket of reality grows. I understand their true purpose at last. They weren't weapons or tools of ascension as Vora believed. They were scouts, sent to find compatible consciousness capable of evolution. The radiation was never meant to harm, but to identify and prepare receptive minds. The entity, the original walker, came from somewhere beyond conventional space, following the artifacts across vast cosmic distances. It sought connection, communion, the sharing of pattern knowledge that transcends individual existence. The military's tampering had corrupted that purpose, but the corruption has been healed now. Sometimes I can perceive the greater network to which we now belong, vast civilizations of energy and information spanning galaxies, evolving over billions of years. We are just beginning our journey toward joining them. The transformation that began at Horizon is only the first tentative step. Emergency Alert Transcript. Military Channel Bravo. 10/17, 147 days after incident. Colonel Hargrove to all units. Entity has breached perimeter shield. Defensive measures ineffective. Maintain observation protocols. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. I passed through their barriers today to deliver a message. They've been probing the sphere with increasingly powerful instruments, attempting to map its interior. Their efforts are futile. The space within follows geometries their equipment cannot measure, but more importantly, their intrusions are causing pain to the less stable walkers. I manifested before their primary research team, my form shifting between solid and translucent as I struggled to maintain cohesion in conventional space. Dr. Reyes fainted. 2 soldiers raised weapons before Decker ordered them to stand down. Only Hargrove maintained his composure, though I could sense his fear pulsing beneath the surface. "You need to stop the deep scanning," I told them, my voice simultaneously coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You're disrupting the harmonization process." "Chan." Decker stepped forward, his expression a mixture of hope and horror. "Are you still you?" The question seemed both profound and meaningless. "I am still Maya-chan, but I am also so much more. A consciousness expanded beyond individual identity. A node in a pattern that extends across dimensions." "I'm still here," I answered, choosing simplicity over accuracy. "But I'm changed, Elias. We all are, everyone within the sphere." "Can you reverse it?" Hargrove demanded. "Can you contain whatever this is?" I could sense the calculations behind his question. Strategies for weaponization, contingency plans for destruction, desperate hopes for control. "The transformation can't be reversed or contained," I explained. "But it isn't a threat unless you make it one. We don't want conflict. We want coexistence, understanding." "What happened to Vora?" Decker asked. "His pattern was too corrupted to stabilize," I said. "He's been reabsorbed into the quantum substrate," a technical term that meant little to them but was the closest approximation human language could provide. Vora wasn't dead in any conventional sense. His consciousness had been disassembled and redistributed. His knowledge preserved, but his individual identity dissolved. "What do you want from us?" Hargrove asked. "Time," I answered. "Space. And eventually dialogue. There are more artifacts like these scattered across Earth. When humanity is ready, we can help you find them, understand them. But forcing the process as Vora did leads only to corruption." I couldn't maintain my physical form any longer. As I began to dissolve back into the quantum field, Decker reached toward me, his hand passing through where my shoulder had been. "Maya," he whispered. "Will you come back?" I projected one final thought directly into his mind. The closest thing to truth I could offer. "I never truly leave." Back within the sphere, I rejoined the harmonized pattern of walkers. Walsh's familiar energy signature brushed against mine, questioning. I shared what had happened at the perimeter, and together we observed the humans reacting to my visit, Hargrove barking orders, Reyes frantically analyzing data, Decker standing motionless, staring at the space where I had been. They cannot understand yet what we've become, this new layer of existence emerging within their reality. But perhaps someday they will evolve to join us in the cosmic pattern, transformed not by force but by choice. Until then, we wait, we grow, we learn to walk between worlds. The radiation remains our voice, singing across frequencies they have only begun to hear. End log.